Hello and welcome to the Breeders' Cup Turf Monster Podcast presented by Spendthrift Farm, home of six-time reigning champion sire Into Mischief. Next up, very happy to bring in a renowned international broadcaster who you've seen in many, many places. This year, you're going to see a lot of him on the At the Races social media coverage out at Breeders' Cup. When you see that American guy on there, don't listen to him, but the rest of the coverage coming from that social media coverage from At the Races, generally speaking, pretty good. We welcome him back to the In the Money airways for his customary assignment. Talking of the turf, he's Matt Chapman. Matt, how are you?
Pete, always good to speak to you. Really enjoy these shows. And, when it comes to American racing, I think everyone loves it when they hear from you stateside and on Sky Sports Racing. Your selections always bear close scrutiny. And as you say, I try and chuck out as much news as I can next week. I think last year, very much, I have to say, helped by a couple of things that happened. Firstly, of course, City of Troy running. And secondly, the fact that while in America, Aidan O'Brien had a chat about some of his runners who'd been denied running in Australia at the time. But I think
Right.
our coverage got over 4.6 million impressions, which isn't bad for 3 or 4 days in the morning. So yeah, I think for different reasons, there's every chance of getting somewhere near that tally. We don't quite have that City of Troy taking on the Americans in the Breeders' Cup Classic this time, but we do have a Breeders' Cup Classic of the ages. Depending on who you have your best horse racing arguments with, you could certainly argue for those of us of a certain age that it's the best Breeders' Cup Classic for many years. Some might even be able to argue it's the best ever. And I'm not talking about one individual performance here. There are often horses that put up an amazing performance in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but a race from top to bottom, the best three-year-olds from last year taking on 3 or 4 great 3-year-olds from this year, plus a whole host of other Grade 1 winners, means that I think that the likes of Sovereignty have the chance to go into the Hall of Fame and racing mortality. And that's what we want to see. And that's what the Breeders' Cup is all about, whether it's on dirt or turf.
All right, we're going to get to our regularly scheduled programming of the turf in a second, but I was going to ask you about the Classic, of course, not least because both you and Vanessa Ryle, who will be within the money, providing coverage week of once again, gave out a confident nod to Sierra Leone in last year's race. We're not going to make you give a Classic selection here. Folks are going to have to turn into the ATR at the races social coverage and or in the media, in the money media next week to get that. We'll pivot instead to the turf. You're wearing an appropriate hat to talk about this year's Breeders' Cup turf. We've got the sweat, the hoodie on
This
as
is the
well.
Keeneland. This is from Keeneland from some years ago, and I have to say, Breeders' Cup merch isn't the cheapest merch you'll ever buy in your life, but it lasts a long time, so it's well worth. This is 2020 in Keeneland, and it's still going strong.
Not bad at all. Well worn and well loved, no doubt. But seeing a Nabel on the hat makes me want to bring up Minnie Hauk right away, the major player. There's some similarities in profile here between these two horses. She certainly deserves a place near the top of the market in this year's Breeders' Cup turf. Does she deserve to be the even money she currently is right now? What do you think of Minnie Hauk and her chances?
Well, if this race was in Europe, I think she'd be odds on. So, so you get the even money, I guess, because of the uncertainty of a couple of factors. The biggest, in my book, the biggest factor is it's the end, the cliche of all cliches. But Pete, you and me, we're the master of cliches. Although I don't know
We
why
have
I
to be.
dragged, yeah, I don't know why I dragged you into that. But I mean, the big problem with her is the travelling at the end of a long season. But in real terms, as a bettor, we'll obviously have a look at her in the mornings, but even that won't tell you much unless you live with her every day of your life. I think that's just the risk you take when you're backing any horse that travels to a horse race. But on all we know, she is the form horse, the European form horse. She's a classic winner. She's come up against the boys. She's run Darry's very close in a Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, where the first two have run away from the field in the final furlong. Was it the Arc de Triomphe equivalent of this year's Breeders' Cup Classic? The answer to that is categorically no. It wasn't the greatest arc of all time, but these two horses ran away from the field to the line. They both looked strong, strong stayers. And the key with Minnie Hauk, I should say, is this: that when she won the Yorkshire Oaks, the connections had a horse called Whirl in the mix as well. And after the Yorkshire Oaks, they said, Whirl will go to the Arc de Triomphe. She likes juicy ground. Minnie Hauk will go straight to the Breeders' Cup. Of course, at that stage, we were kind of thinking, well, filly and mare turf or turf? No doubt turf, because she's a mile and a half filly. She stays strong and she wants firm ground. So her second in the Arc de Triomphe on that basis can be marked up because the ground wasn't as fast as she liked. And she proved herself a very, very high class filly against the boys. So, all in all, for me, she's not just the best European raider in this race, she is much the best.
A dynasty in motion, reshaping the sport's greatest tradition, channeling the legends of his line and surpassing them. 4 of the last 6 Derby winners carry his genes. A Golden Son, a Horse of the Year. Another chapter written beneath those iconic spires. Derby dreams fulfilled for the titans of our industry. From authentic to sovereignty, a legacy both real and supreme. Into mischief.
Who do you see as the main danger to Minnie Hauk?
So a couple of things on this. I mean, Goliath does have form on good to firm ground, and connections have wanted to run him in this. He ran 6th in the Japan Cup nearly this time last year, and he does have a win on good to firm, but he also has lots of form on good to soft and heavy. Maybe he goes on everything. He is a pretty highly rated horse, but I find him a bit quirky, and I wouldn't think he's 100% reliable. Here's the bombshell. So I think that El Cordobes can finish in front of Rebels Romance.
Ooh, that's
And
controversial.
well, it's probably, I think controversial is over egging it, but I'll take it. But I look, Rebels Romance in picks and chooses the Group Ones that he wins, and I take nothing against him, the Globetrotter. He is a horse who is much loved by me and anyone else who follows this sport. He's been in loads of different countries all around the world. He is a warrior of international horse racing, and for that we doff our Breeders' Cup caps and salute him. But when he runs in a, if he ran in an Irish Group One, when he runs in a UK Group One, he's the third, fourth, or fifth rather than the winner of the race. And as I say, if he was in a match against Minnie Hauk would be 1-2, I suspect, over here against Rebels Romance. So and there are bits of form recently that make me feel that Rebels Romance is certainly not better than he's ever been, and probably not quite as good on occasions. Even his German win, I didn't think was quite him. Um, but it's difficult to tell with him because he's such a warrior. He can still bring it to the table. Anyway, coming back to El Cordobes, I think he's the young kid on the block. He'll be ridden, I suspect, in a similar way, and perhaps ridden a little bit more to get a place than Rebels Romance, in that Rebels Romance is not going to be ridden to try and achieve a best possible position. He's going to be ridden to win it. And I just wonder whether El Cordobes will be tucked out the back and swoop late. He's a very strong stayer, and I can't quote Charlie Appleby on this because I can't remember the exact conversation, but I have had this conversation with him, and I got the impression he didn't think I was mad to think that El Cordobes would finish in front of Rebels Romance, and Charlie would take any opportunity to tell me I'm mad. So I suspect I'm onto something. So I'd have Minnie Hauk for the win and El Cordobes for the place, unless you can tell me there's an American in here lurking that I'm not seeing who could cause an upset.
Not for the top 2 spots, not for the forecast, not for the exacta. The American, I just want to put on the radar of people, and I'm sure others will be making this observation, Gold Phoenix, Del Mar's his favorite course. He has outrun his odds in each of his Breeders' Cup Turf appearances. If you're playing USA style exotics like the trifecta or superfecta, if you're working with a bookmaker who might give you extra places each way, especially, I would not mind taking a flyer on the old boy, a favorite on these airwaves. Gold Flippin' Phoenix, as we call him around here, though it's not flippin', obviously, but we love him, and we think he has a little bit of an on the board squeak, I would say. But I think you're right. I mean, in terms of these top two spots, it certainly seems like Godolphin and Minnie Hauk are the places to look.
Yeah, and the other thing worth pointing out is that, look, saying Minnie Hauk's going to win the Breeders' Cup Turf is not anything new to anyone listening to this. It's a chat about a horse race that we love, and it's very easy to end up with Minnie Hauk, and probably 99% of people watching this would do so. But in stateside place pools, El Cordobes might not be terrible odds, because people get sucked into the previous winner, Rebel's Romance, the horse trying to make history, the International Globetrotter. People will get sucked into Minnie Hauk, and it's just possible that El Cordobes will be quite reasonable odds in place pools. So I really think he's worth a look at from that angle, maybe. Forecasts are always a dodgy game. You always end up with one in the wrong place or something. But but the place pool, Cordobes, is certainly something I'm going to give a second look to anyway.
He's going to be a crooked number in the betting, I would predict. He certainly is right now, looking at prices of 25, 28, 33 in different
I mean, that's
books.
crazy. He's never
Yeah.
that kind of chance for this kind of race. He's
No.
he's he's 2 lengths behind Rebel's Romance, and he hasn't had a big field strong gallop to run at recently, which is what he wants. You know, 6 runner tactical races where Rebel's Romance kicks and wins it a long way out, and not what El Cordobes is about. And you have to
Right.
remember, he was often a front runner over here before he slightly changed tactics stateside. I think there'll be a gallop on here. They'll want to gallop for Minnie Hauk if nothing else, and I think this will be a test that El Cordobes hasn't had stateside yet.
It's a great point. Matt, great seeing you on here. I'm sure we'll get to do a ton of content together for attheraces.com and the At the Races social media feeds out there in Del Mar, and I can't wait.
Keep it for Natali.